Chapter 4 Blood and Bone. A pigeon fluttered past Liana's shoulder, wings catching the sickly glow of a flickering streetlight. It perched on the lamppost above, cooing softly, a sound that might have been soothing in daylight, but felt ominous now, in the empty street where nothing else moved. Liana tapped walking pens buried deep in the pockets of her hoodie. The night air smelled of rain and rust. The streets empty except for the distant hum of the city that never truly slept. Footsteps echoed off abandoned storefronts, each one a reminder of how much the city had changed, how much everything had changed. She could feel eyes on her, multiple sets, some human, most not. The city had become a hunting ground, and everyone could sense when prey walked alone. Then she heard it, asterisk thump 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 dot asterisk, a heartbeat, massive, each beat strong enough to feel through the pavement, to rattle the windows of closed shops, getting closer with each pulse. She stopped walking but didn't turn around. Her eyes stayed fixed on the cracked sidewalk ahead, expression flat, bored even, like this was an inconvenience rather than a threat, like her evening was being interrupted by something tedious instead of deadly. Behind her, the asphalt began to glow. Orange light spilled across the street, shadows dancing wild and frantic as heat shimmered the air in visible waves. The temperature spiked cold autumn night, becoming summer afternoon in seconds. Claws scraped molten lines into the pavement, each step leaving glowing furrows that cooled from white to orange to dull red. The sound was visceral, a low growl of melting tar and stone, of material that wasn't meant to liquefy being forced by sheer heat. The creature stalking toward her was the size of a semi-truck, its body wreathed in living flame that moved like liquid, like muscle. A tiger but wrong, twisted, elevated beyond natural law. Every muscle rippled beneath fire that didn't burn its own flesh, each movement leaving after images of heat distortion in the air. Eyes like molten dough fixed on her back with predatory intelligence, not the mindless hunger of a beast, but calculation, intent, purpose. This thing had been hunting her specifically. The air around it warped and twisted, reality bending under the weight of so much concentrated heat. The streetlight above flickered and died, plastic housing beginning to melt and drip, a car parked nearby had its paint bubbling, windows cracking from thermal stress. Liana sighed softly. The sound was almost disappointed, like she'd been hoping for a quiet walk and was irritated to be proven wrong. "Don't follow me," she said, lifting one arm with casual precision. Her skin split open along her forearm, no blood, no pain, no hesitation, just flesh parting like a seam being unzipped as jagged spikes of hardened bone burst outward. They were beautiful in their horror, gleaming pale white under the dying streetlight, each one sharp enough to catch and reflect what little light remained, perfectly formed, organically grown, deadly as any blade ever forged. With a casual flick of her wrist, she fired them in a hailstorm toward the pigeon perched above. The spikes screamed through the air, each one moving fast enough to whistle, to leave trails in the mist. 20, 30, 40 projectiles, too many to count, too fast to dodge. They should have shredded the bird, turned it into red mist and feathers. At the same instant, a single strand of her hair detached. It hardened mid-fall, transforming from something soft and organic into something sharp and deadly, thin as a needle, harder than steel, moving faster than thought. It whipped backward with a sound like a bowstring being released, aimed with perfect precision at the tiger's skull. The pigeon didn't move, didn't even flinch. The dome of white bone erupted around it, interlocking plates forming a perfect shield in a split second before impact. The geometry was flawless, every angle calculated to deflect maximum force with minimal material. Liana's bone spikes shattered harmlessly against it like hail on reinforced glass, fragmenting into powder that drifted down like snow. Behind Liana, the flaming tiger's roar cut off mid-breath. The sound that replaced it was worse a wet, choking gurgle as the creature tried to understand what had happened, tried to process that it was already dead. The massive beast collapsed, its body hitting the ground with a dull, shaking thud that cracked the pavement and set off car alarms 3 blocks away. Orange flames flickered once, twice, growing dimmer with each pulse, then they went dark, leaving only rapidly cooling corpse and the acrid smell of burnt flesh and hair. The hair-thin spike of bone had pierced clean through its skull, entering through the eye socket and punching out the back with surgical precision. The bone was still faintly smoking from the heat, but it had held. Liana's creations always held. She didn't look back, didn't need to. She'd felt the moment of impact, the way the bone had found its target and ended the threat. She kept walking, the bone spikes on her arm sinking slowly back beneath her skin as if they'd never existed, flesh knitting closed without a scar, returning to smooth, unblemished skin in seconds. Feathers rustled. The pigeon dropped from the lamppost, its form twisting mid-air in a transformation that defied physics and biology in equal measure. Wings elongated, feathers darkening into fabric, hollow bones thickening and restructuring, the beak sharpened into a jaw, yellow eyes shifting to amber, talons becoming feet in expensive shoes. The change was smooth, practiced, effortless, the work of someone who'd been doing this since before he could walk. By the time his feet hit the pavement, a man stood beside her, tall, black-haired, his build all sharp lines and quiet menace. His face looked carved from shadow, angular and cold, with features that spoke of centuries of selective breeding. High cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes that held ancient knowledge and modern arrogance in equal measure. He wore a designer coat that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Not a thread out of place despite the transformation. This was Sabine, Dragon Clan enforcer, her brother, Liana, he said sharply, falling into step beside her. His voice carried the particular tone of someone who was used to being obeyed, who'd never had an order questioned. "Watch it. You could have killed me with that stunt." She didn't respond, didn't even glance at him, just kept walking, hands back in her hoodie pockets, shoulders hunched against the mic air. He exhaled through his nose, irritation bleeding into his voice, a muscle in his jaw twitched, the only sign that he was less calm than he appeared. The elders were clear. "You're to have no further contact with that normal. She's beneath you, a waste of time, energy, and clan resources." Liana's lip curled, a low growl rumbling in her throat. The sound was inhuman, primal, the kind of noise that came from something with too many teeth. "She's not a normie anymore." The man stopped walking, his eyes narrowed, amber catching the streetlight and reflecting it back wrong, too bright, too focused. Predator eyes that didn't belong in a human face. "Awakened or not, you saw what she was in that alley. You're the one who called it in." His voice dropped, each word deliberate and weighted with history, with centuries of tradition and bloodline. If she died there, it would have been her own weakness. Natural selection. The world doesn't need more weak awakened, it needs strong ones, capable ones. People who can survive without being coddled. He stepped closer, invading her space, using his height advantage the way he always did. "Our bloodline goes back to the dawn of humankind, one of the oldest. Most clans died out, forgot their roots, fell into obscurity or were wiped out by rivals. There are 12 great clans left in this world, Iana, 12 families who survived every purge, every war, every attempt to destroy us, and you want to throw it away for some street fighter who barely survived her first beast." The words hum in the air like poison, like an accusation and a threat wrapped into one. Iana stopped walking, her jaw tightened, her hands curled into fists inside her hoodie pockets, knuckles pressing against fabric. The air around her began to shimmer slightly, not from heat this time, but from mana responding to emotion, reality bending at the edges as her power leaked through her carefully maintained control. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there breathing slowly, wrestling with something that wanted to explode outward. Then, without warning, she spun and slapped him. The blow landed with the force of a bomb, not because she'd enhanced her strength though she had, bones in her hand restructuring mid-swing to handle the impact, but because behind that slap was everything she'd been holding back, every condescending comment from the elders, every dismissal of Mara as lesser, every century of tradition that demanded she sacrifice her own happiness or bloodline purity. A year of guilt and loneliness and self-hatred compressed into a single motion. Sabine was thrown backward through the air, body spinning like a rag doll, limbs flailing as he tried and failed to regain control. He crashed into the side of a 12-story building with an impact that sounded like a car accident, like a bomb going off in slow motion. The concrete exploded around him, dust and fragments blasting outward in a cloud. The impact point spiderwebbed cracks, racing up the structure like lightning captured in stone, spreading wider and wider, until the entire facade groaned under structural damage it was never designed to handle. The building groaned the deep, guttural sound of metal twisting and concrete crumbling. Support beams shrieked, windows shattered in cascading waves, raining glass onto the street below, and then it collapsed inward, the entire structure folding in on itself like a house of cards, burying Sabine beneath tons of rubble and twisted rebar and everything else that made up a modern building. The sound was apocalyptic. Thunder and avalanche and car crashes all combined into one continuous roar that echoed off neighboring buildings and set off every car alarm in a 5-block radius. Dust billowed into the street, drifting like snow through the sickly orange glow of the street lights. It hung in the air, thick and choking, turning the world into a hazy nightmare. For a few seconds, silence. just the settling of debris and the wail of distant sirens starting to respond to what senses had registered as either an earthquake or a terrorist attack. Then, from beneath the wreckage, something stirred. Chunks of broken stone rolled aside. A shadow moved within the debris, unhurried, unbothered. Concrete slabs that weighed tons shifted as if they were styrofoam. Rebar bent and snapped. The rubble pile heaved upward as something underneath pushed against gravity and mass with casual ease. Zapine rose, brushing dust from his coat as if he'd simply tripped. Not a scratch, not a bruise, not a hair out of place beyond what could be fixed with a quick hand through it. His clothes were dusty but intact, the expensive fabric apparently as reinforced as his bones. His expression was annoyed more than anything else. Not angry anger implied surprise, implied that something unexpected had happened. This is just irritation at being inconvenienced, at having to climb out of rubble, when he could have been at home. "Are we done?" he asked, voice flat. Liana didn't answer, just stared at him with an expression that was equal parts fury and resignation, because that was the thing about the Dragon Clan. They were nearly indestructible. You could slap one through a building and they'd walk away asking if you felt better now. It made them perfect enforcers, perfect soldiers, perfect jailers. His form shimmered into the rush of feathers. He transformed back into a pigeon. The change was instant, effortless, requiring no more thought than blinking. Wings beat the air once, twice, lifting him into the night sky. He circled once above her, a silent reminder that he could follow her anywhere, watch from any perch, report back to the elders everything she did. Then he flew off into the night without another word, disappearing into the urban landscape like he'd never been there. Liana didn't watch him leave. She turned and kept walking, hands returning to her hoodie pockets, the faint shimmer of her power fading back beneath her skin. But her hands were shaking, just slightly, just enough that she had to clench them into fists to stop it. The street fell silent again, save for the distant wail of sirens and the hum of a city that had long since learned not to ask questions. Police would come, investigate, find the collapsed building and the Bert Tiger corpse. They'd file reports that would never be followed up on, mark it as a wakened incident and move on. There were too many of these now. Too many to track, too many to care about individually. Behind her, the flaming tiger's corpse smoldered in the dark, already cooling, already being forgotten. Just another body in a city full of them, and somewhere above, a pigeon perched on a rooftop, watching with eyes too intelligent to be natural, making mental notes to report to the elders about their wayward daughter who still refused to let go of the normie girl. Hush hush. Earlier that evening, Mara grabbed a couch pillow and screamed into it until her throat burned. The sound came out muffled, frustrated, raw with emotion she didn't have words for. When her lungs were empty and her throat ached, she threw the pillow across the room. It hit the wall and fell lamely, accomplishing nothing except making her feel slightly more ridiculous. "Really, it's that easy," she muttered to the empty apartment, voice rough like she'd been garbling gravel. "That easy for me to fall right into her hands. Some kind touch, a bit of honey on my wounds, and I melt like ice in boiling water." She sat up, hugging her knees to her chest, heart hammering against her ribs hard enough that she could feel it in her throat. Her burn still ached, a constant low-level pain that made every movement a reminder of how close she'd come to dying. But that wasn't what hurt. The moment she wrapped her arms around me, I was done. Finished. She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Gone. Every wall I built, every promise I made to myself just gone. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark TV screen across the room, pale, bruised, looking like she'd been through a war. Which, technically, she had. That's it, I just can't let her touch me again. I can't. The words felt hollow even as she said them, like declaring you'd stop breathing or stop needing water. "Keep your distance, Mara. Guard up. Don't let her in." But even as she spoke the words, she knew they were lies, because the truth was worse than being weak. The truth was that she didn't want to keep her distance. That guard up bullshit was exactly that bullshit she told herself to feel less pathetic. Her mind drifted back to Liana, the warmth of her skin, the calm power in her eyes, the way everything around her seemed to bend without her even trying. The way she'd explain Mana like it was the most natural thing in the world. The patience in her voice when Ma struggled, the gentle way she tended to the burns. "She's awakened," Mara whispered to the empty apartment. The words tasted strange, significant. Does that even matter? Would have loved her either way. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Power or no power, clan or no clan, secrets or no secrets, she would have loved Liana either way. The awakening just added complications to something that was already complicated enough. Then her thoughts snagged on something, one line that wouldn't stop echoing in her head, like a record skip. Asterisk, she said she'd been training since she was a child. Asterisk. Mara frowned, rubbing her temple as a dull headache started to pulse behind her eyes. What the hell does that even mean? Awakening didn't start until 2020. I remember at the first cases, the news coverage, the panic. So how? She stopped. Her heartbeat quickened. The implications spread through her mind like cracks in glass. Were there others before? Hidden ones? She stood up, pacing now, unable to sit still with these thoughts racing. Hidden families. People who kept it secret somehow. She thought of those random forum posts she'd seen back before the portals, conspiracy theorists claiming powers existed before 2020, that governments were hiding it, that ancient bloodlines walked among normal people with abilities that defied explanation. She'd scrolled past them like everyone else. Crazy talk. Tinfoil hat nonsense. The ravings of people who wanted the world to be more interesting than it was. But what if they weren't crazy? She whispered to the empty room. What if they were right? The headache intensified. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to massage away the pressure building behind her eyes. There's so much she didn't tell me, so much she won't tell me. The bits of memory flickered through her mind, Liana's calm voice saying, ** mana flows like breath. Tai Chi helps you shape it. ** the casual way she talked about training and energy pools and building power over time, like she'd been doing it for years, like it was second nature. Because it is *, Mara realized. She's been doing this her whole life. While I was learning algebra and worrying about acne, she was learning to what? Reshape her bones, channel supernatural energy, become something more than human *, mana, Tai Chi. The words felt strange in her mouth, ancient and heavy with meaning she didn't fully grasp. They weren't modern terms being applied to modern phenomena. They were old words for old things that had apparently always existed, just hidden. Mara exhaled shakily. What the hell are you, Liana? What's your family? What have you been hiding? More questions than answers. And the worst part was knowing that even if Liana wanted to tell her, she probably couldn't. Not fully. Not without breaking whatever rules her family had about keeping their secrets from outsiders. But I'm not an outsider anymore, Mara thought. I'm awakened now. Doesn't that count for something, The hiss stirred in the back of her mind, coiling, attentive. Like it had opinions about Liana and her secrets. Like it was listening to every thought and cataloguing them for later. Mara shuddered and pushed the presence away. Not now. She had enough to deal with without adding mysterious energy living in my head to the list. She slumped back on the couch, the pillow retrieved and back in her lap. A phone burst against her thigh, lighting up the dim apartment with its pale glow. 78% she charged it at her parents' place that morning, which felt like a lifetime ago now. She stared at the screen for a long moment, before unlocking it, thumb hovering over the search bar. This was stupid. She should rest, let her body heal. Not go chasing after mystical martial arts training like she was in a kung fu movie. But what else was she supposed to do? Wait for Liana to come back? Hope the hiss in her head would just go away on its own. Pretend she was normal when every fiber of her being screamed that she was something else now. All right, Tai Chi, she muttered, opening her browser. Let's see what mystical life-changing bullshit you've got for me. The search results were mostly fitness studios, wellness blogs, and YouTube tutorials with thumbnail monks standing in fog looking enlightened and vaguely constipated. She clicked on one, some influencer in expansive athleisure doing slow movements to lofi beats while talking about finding your center and connecting to universal energy. Yeah, no, she exited after 10 seconds. The woman had been talking about chakras and crystal healing, which maybe those were real too now. What did Mara know, but it felt wrong, performative, like someone who'd read about spirituality online and decided to monetize it. She scrolled deeper past the Instagram wellness crowd with their perfect lighting and sponsor codes, past the corporate studios with their subscription models, and watered-down movements designed for suburban moms. Most of it felt hollow, packaged, fake, like someone had taken something real and ancient and wrapped it in plastic for mass consumption. Then one caught her eye. Master who used traditional Tai Chi and energy flow, local sessions in Eastgate Park, the listing looked old, like it hadn't been updated in years. The website was basic HTML, the kind that hadn't been fashionable since the early 2000s. No SEO optimization, no social media integration, just information and a phone number. The picture was just a faded snapshot of an old man standing in a public park at sunrise, pigeons scattered around his feet. He was mid-form, hands raised in a slow, deliberate stance. and something about the way he stood made the pigeons look attentive, like they were watching him, not just scavenging for breadcrumbs, like they recognized something in him that commanded respect. The image quality was terrible, probably taken on a flip phone a decade ago, but there was something about it, something that made her pause and look closer. Mara stopped scrolling. Master Liu, she whispered, reading the sparse description. Osirisk traditional forms passed down through generations, real training for real results, no gimmicks, no mysticism, just movement, breath, and energy. Morning sessions at Eastgate Park, dawn until the sun clears the trees. All are welcome, those who are ready will know. Asterisk. The last line made her skin prickle. Asterisk, those who are ready will know. Asterisk, it could have been pretentious bullshit, probably was. Something about it resonated. Her thumb hovered over the reviews section. There weren't many, few locals saying he was weird but legit, one person calling him the real deal, not the Instagram kind. Another review just said changed my life, can't explain how, won't believe me if I try. Several reviews mentioned that he was strict and traditional and not for beginners who want their hands held. One person had written he won't teach you, he'll show you, and if you're smart you'll figure it out, if not, you'll give up and he won't care. That should have been a red flag. Instead, it made her more certain. Her thumb moved to the address line. Eastgate Park, 5 blocks away. Sessions start at dawn. She glanced at the clock on her phone. 11:47 p.m. Dawn would come in about 6 hours. She should sleep, should let her body heal, should be smart about this. Guess that's a sign, she murmured anyway. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and her own pulse drumming in her ears. The earlier anger had drained away, replaced by a thin thread of determination, or maybe desperation. She didn't know which anymore. Maybe they were the same thing. She tapped directions. The map blinked to life. A little blue dot marking her location. The route appeared straightforward. 5 blocks, less than a 10-minute walk. She could do that. Burns or no burns, exhaustion or no exhaustion. Mysterious entity in her head or no mysterious entity. She stared at the screen for a moment, then whispered, "All right, old man, let's see what you can teach me about mana." She set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. Wait, too early, painful, even. But if this Master Liu was serious about dawn sessions, she needed to be there before the sun came up. First impressions mattered. Showing up late would probably get her dismissed immediately if the reviews were accurate. She glanced down at her hands, flexing her fingers slowly. For a split second, she thought she saw her breath shimmer in the air just slightly, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day, the faintest distortion of light and air that could have been her imagination. She tried to do it again, focusing on that feeling she'd had when kissing Liana, the warmth that had flooded through her before the hiss interrupted, the sense of energy moving beneath her skin. Nothing, just normal air and normal fingers, and the normal frustration of having something almost work before it slipped away like water through her hands. Mara exhaled slowly, frustration knotting in her chest. "If Liana won't teach me," she whispered, "I'll figure it out myself." It was pride talking, stubbornness, the same trait that had made her keep fighting the snake even when she knew she was outmatched, the same trait that had gotten her into Krav Maga in the first place, back when she was 16 and angry at the world and needed somewhere to put all that rage. Maybe that trait would get her killed, or maybe it would save her life. Hard to say which. Outside, the city lights flickered. As a faint breeze moved through the cracked window she'd left open for air circulation, somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The sound was constant now, part of the city's new soundtrack. Emergency had become ambient. The world kept turning, indifferent and hungry, and somewhere 5 blocks away, an old man would wait before dawn to practice ancient forms in a public park, alone except for the pigeons and whatever students were desperate or crazy enough to show up. And Mara sat in the dark, staring at a map on her phone, tracing the path to a park 5 blocks away where an old man stood among pigeons like he was something more than human. Because maybe, just maybe, he could teach her to be something more than human too. She set the phone down and closed her eyes, trying to sleep. The burns ached, the hiss coiled in the back of her mind, and somewhere deep in her chest, that second heartbeat pulsed in rhythm with her own. 6 hours until dawn. 6 hours until she started learning what she really was. 6 hours until everything changed again. Hush dawn. The morning air was cool and damp when Mara arrived at Eastgate Park. Mist clung to the grass like a living thing, and the sun was just beginning to burn through the grey sky, a pale disk barely visible through the clouds. A handful of joggers passed by, earbuds in, oblivious to everything except their pace and their playlist. Somewhere a dog barked, the sound carrying far in the still morning air. But the far corner of the park, where the old man stood felt separate somehow, quieter, like there was an invisible barrier that sound didn't quite penetrate the same way. The few people who glanced that direction didn't quite look directly at him, their eyes sliding past, like he was part of the landscape instead of a person. Master Liu moved through slow, deliberate forms, hands tracing circles in the air that left after images in the mist. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady and deep, so deep she could hear it from 20 feet away, a rhythm that sounded more like waves on shore than human respiration. The pigeons scattered around his feet didn't flee when she approached. They just watched, heads tilting with that unnerving bird focus that made it seem like they knew things they shouldn't. Mara stopped a few feet away, hands shoved in her hoodie pockets. Suddenly uncertain, what was she supposed to do? Interrupt? Wait? Clear her throat? She felt like she'd walked onto a stage mid-performance and didn't know her lines. After a long moment, long enough that she was considering just leaving, Lee's eyes opened. He didn't seem surprised to see her, didn't ask who she was or what she wanted. Just looked at her for a beat, assessing, then gestured to the space beside him with one withered hand. Come. The word was simple, final, not an invitation so much as a statement of fact you came here to learn. So come. She obeyed, feeling awkward and out of place. The ground was soft beneath her shoes, damp grass pressing into the soles, cold seeping through the fabric. She took up a position beside him, mimicking his stance as best she could, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, arms hanging loose. Breathe, Liu said simply. Mara blinked. That's it. That is everything. He resumed his slow movements, hands rising and falling like waves, like breath given physical form. The awakened call it Mana. We have always known it as Ki. Same river, different name. She tried to mimic his stance, but her body felt stiff, uncooperative. Her shoulders were too high, tension creeping into muscles that should be relaxed. Her knees locked despite her attempts to keep them soft. Her breathing was shallow, patching in her chest. Patience, Liu said without looking at her, somehow aware of every error she was making. You stand like someone expecting to be struck. I usually am, she muttered, thinking of the snake, of a lifetime of training that taught her to always be ready for attack. He chuckled, low and rough like grinding stones. Then today, you will not fight. You will listen. He stepped closer, and the faint scent of sandalwood and rain clung to him. Not cologne, something natural, like it emanated from his skin itself. Raise your palms, slowly, feel the space between them. Mara lifted her hands in front of her chest, palms facing each other about 6 inches apart. The space between felt empty, just air and awkwardness and her own self-consciousness. She focused, trying to sense something, anything that wasn't just normal air between normal hands. At first, nothing. Then, after a few breaths, after she stopped trying so hard and just existed in the moment, the emptiness began to thicken. Subtle at first, like static before a storm, like the air had texture it hadn't possessed a moment before, the warmth that had flickered inside her the night before with Liana faint, uncertain, interrupted, now spread outward, spiraling through her arms until her fingertips tingled. Her eyes widened. What is that? Kai, Liu said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Your body recognizes the flow, even if your mind resists. The body remembers what the mind has forgotten. She stared at her hands. The faintest shimmer rippled between them, barely visible in the morning light, but definitely there. Like heat, distortion, like reality was slightly thinner in that space. Her breath caught. Don't chase it, Liu warned gently. It is shy. It comes when invited, not commanded. Like a cat, not a dog. Mara forced herself to relax, to not grip at the sensation with her mind. The shimmer stayed, pulsing faintly with her heartbeat. She could feel it now, warm, alive, responding to her breathing like a second pulse beneath her skin, moving with her, through her, part of her. Good, Liu murmured. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance with light touches, one at her elbow, correcting the angle, one at her shoulder, dropping it down and back. The contact grounded her, and the warmth flowed downward through her spine until it pooled low in her stomach. This is your dantian, he said, pressing one finger just below her navel. Your center, the seat of power and calm. Western medicine calls it the core. We know it as the ocean of Ki. Feels like I need to pee, she muttered, adding a faint smile. It will, until it does not. The body must learn new sensations. Give it time. He circled back around to face her, hands clasped behind his back. Now, when you breathe in, draw the Ki inward. When you breathe out, let it flow through you. Do not hold it. Do not force it. Guide it like a stream, not a dam. Mara inhaled slowly, consciously. The warmth responded, spiraling through her chest, down her arms, pooling in her center, like water finding its level. When she exhaled, it moved not outward into the whirl, but through her, circulating like water through channels she hadn't known existed until this moment. Ancient pathways lighting up, remembering their purpose. And then her hearing sharpened, not the overwhelming flood from before, not the screaming chaos at every sound at once that had left her gasping and overwhelmed. This was different, clear, focused. She could hear the rustle of leaves 3 trees away, individual leaves moving in individual patterns, the faint scratch of a squirrel's claws on bark, each tiny claw audible, the steady rhythm of leaves breathing behind her, perfectly controlled, perfectly even. She could hear her own heartbeat, the flow of blood through her veins, the quiet crackle of her joints settling into the new stance. It lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4, then it faded like fog in sunlight, and the world returned to normal volume and clarity. She gasped, stumbling slightly, the loss of that expanded awareness almost painful, like going blind after seeing color for the first time. I heard your power, you said calmly, unsurprised. High feeds it, mana shapes it. When the flow is smooth, the power comes naturally. When you force it, it fights you. This is the lesson. Mara's chest heaved, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool morning air. That's the longest I've held it. Because you stopped trying to control it, Liu said. You let it move. Water flows. Fire burns. Wind blows. These things do not happen because they are controlled. They happen because it is their nature. She stared at her hands again, flexing her fingers. The warmth had already faded, leaving her cold and trembling, but something had shifted. She could feel it, a faint current beneath her skin, waiting, not gone, just resting, ready to flow again when called upon correctly. Liu stepped back, clasping his hands behind him. You will come each morning. You will breathe, move, and listen. Do not force what does not come. The body remembers faster than the mind allows. Be patient with both. Mara nodded slowly, still catching her breath. Her burns ached from the exertion, but it was a good ache, the kind that meant she'd actually done something instead of just sitting around feeling sorry for herself. She turned to leave, shoving her hands into her hoodie pockets. Liu was already moving again, eyes closed, body flowing through another slow form. The pigeons circled him quietly, as if guarding something sacred, as if they knew what they were witnessing even if the joggers passing by didn't. The morning sun had risen higher now, casting long shadows across the park. Her heartbeat was still too fast, and every step felt like walking through invisible waves of warmth that made the air thick and substantial. At the park entrance, she glanced back once. The old man's silhouette moved through the mist, slow and deliberate, like he was painting the air itself with every motion. The pigeons remained, watching with their 2 intelligent eyes, and for just a moment, Mara thought she saw something in the mist around Imbashima, a suggestion of shape, something vast and patient and all beyond measure. Then she blinked and it was gone. Mara exhaled, the corner of her mouth twitching upward into something that might have been a smile. Yeah, she whispered, totally normal. She pulled up her hood and started home, not noticing the faint shimmer that lingered in her footsteps, tiny ripples of K tracing her path through the waking city, visible only to those who knew how to look. And high above, a pigeon that was not a pigeon watched her go, amber eyes tracking every movement, making notes to report back to the elders about the normie girl who wasn't normal anymore, who might never be normal again.